welcome to CDP Day 2023. Customer data platform is a hot topic in the Nordics and among our 20,000 members. Compared to last CDP Day we did in August, the number of registrants almost doubled this time. So it looks like it's increasing actually, the interest. And we receive a lot of questions about business value, system structure and integrations. So I hope we can answer some of them today, so we can see what we get there. Wen's Relations also goes Nordic, and at this event more than 25% of our participants are coming from outside of Sweden. So we do this and all presentations in English. And we broadcast this morning from the Park Studios here in Stockholm. And of course, I need some help in this studio, so I have my sidekick, and the name of him is Daniel Johansson. Welcome, Daniel. Are you ready? Everything under control?
Yeah, everything looks great. And I just want to take this opportunity to invite you all to ask questions for the speakers in our chat function, since we end each segment with a short Q&A. So if you have questions, write them in the chat and I will do my best to bring them up during the discussions. Yeah, so Mats, what do you think? Should we kick things off with a poll?
It's a good idea. Good idea. Let's do a poll, actually. And last time in August, we actually asked kind of the same question to all of you about do you have a CDP implemented today? Let's see. We can compare a little bit the result from last year. So, Daniel, could you broadcast it? Okay, let's see what the results coming in here now. Do you have a CDP implemented today? The different alternatives are yes, of course, we are implementing a CDP platform as we go ahead. We are investing it to invest in the CDP. We are planning that, and maybe in the future not relevant for us at all. Of course, then it's interesting to see why you're here, really. But so we have like the most of it may be in the future. Still, I think that was actually a little bit of the same result from last time, also last year. We are implementing a CDP platform, and we are investigating to invest in a CDP platform that are coming also. So yes, of course, it's like 10% coming there. Let's see. So of course, what else we need to we needed to ask ChatGPT, of course, also what is a CDP. So we asked them about that, and could we show the definition there? A customer data platform, this is what ChatGPT say, is a software system that collects and manages customer data from multiple sources to create a unified customer profile. Important part. The CDP is a design to integrate and consolidate data from different touch points, such as blah 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 websites and etc. etc. Unified customer profile created by a CDP provides a 360 degrees view of the customer that includes their behavior, preferences, and interactions with the brand. Let's see. I think that also Hannes, coming on later, have another definition. So let's see what the differences are, and we can discuss that. That's good. So that was for that. And I also would say, so don't miss the last presentation, the end of the day, close to like 11:30. And then we have how to utilize the CDP in the world of streaming. And you will meet Fredrik Salcedo, Director of Global Martech and CRM, Discovery Plus and Warner Bros. So definitely you should listen to that one. I mean, he's been implementing like 3 different platforms over the years, so I think that he's very experienced in this area. Okay, are you ready for the first speaker? I am. So CDP implementation end to end. We go for the overview consultancy presentation first, and then we come with 2 platform vendors, or 3 actually, and then we have another case. We will also meet Klarna later today, but I know that you know that from you check the program. So welcome on stage, partner and co-founder at Remotion, Hannes Brynger.
Hi.
Hello, Hannes. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So what do you think about the result? You remember that most of them were not
implementing and not planning to implement right now.
No, but maybe planning for the future.
Yeah. I'm actually not surprised, because we look at the Nordic market, not so many CDP's implementations have been done so far. I think a lot of is ahead of us, and they're not really there right now.
But do you feel that we are behind schedule in terms of being compared with the rest of Europe? And
the thing is, I read a study a few months ago, and it seems like the Nordic region is have not come as far as maybe some parts of the rest of Europe. So we're lagging a little bit behind.
Because otherwise you
feel like we're typically sort of early adopters, so that's a little bit strange.
Okay, welcome. Stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. So very welcome to the first session of the CDP day. My name is Hannes Brynger. I'm partner and co-founder of Remotion, which is a consultancy agency. That's it's a change slide. It's a consulting agency that focus on data-driven customer interaction and business agility. These are some of the services we provide to our clients. Today, I'm going to talk about omni-channel personalization, and also the sort of dig deep into the CDP, the definition, what CDP actually have for capabilities, and also what type of CDPs there are on the market today. And then we're going into some key success factors of implementing a CDP, which we've learned by doing a lot of implementations the last 5-6 years. So when we think about CDP, sort of the most interesting part is, of course, the type of capabilities that we can use the CDP, or capabilities we get with the CDP. And we usually divide those into more type of supporting capabilities, more related to IT, to data integration, data ingestion, data management, analytic resources, and so forth. But maybe the most interesting part for us that comes from the business side is the business capabilities. And among those business capabilities, one of the sort of core capabilities you can get with the CDP is actually the omni-channel personalization. So we're going to start off the presentation and talk about omni-channel and sort of how it's done and benefits around that. And then we deep dive into the supporting capabilities, digging into the more technical aspects of the CDP. So the first question is sort of why are so many organizations now looking into going from our omni-channel setup and approach using a CDP? And I think the reason for this is there are a number of challenges today that a lot of organizations have related to their customer interaction. So I would say the first challenge is reach. The first go-to place for using first-party data for personalization today is typically email, and email have a lot of, good capabilities, but you don't really have email addresses to all your customers. And you don't have, all your customers don't have opt-in, and certainly not all your customers open your email. In addition to this, if you want to be able to reach your customer in different contexts, like phases in a customer journey or a customer life cycle, you really need to be able to connect to those customers and personalize the experience in more touch points and more channels. So this is one of the key reasons to go for a CDP implementation. The next one is lack of relevance. As we heard already in the CDP definition, we need to be able to connect all data to one customer in one place. And typically, a lot of organizations have challenges where data is spread out in a number of different platforms. You don't really have the opportunity to create a sort of one customer view or 360 view of the customer. The next one is related to sort of be able to communicate with your customers in real time. Meaning, let's say if a customer does have some sort of behavior on a website or your mobile app, and you want to be able to trigger communication to drive the customer in a specific direction based on that. If you work in a sort of old traditional way, where you have batch job going, let's say every 24 hours or every 10 hours or something like that, you will not be able to react in real time and to do this. And to be able to do this is super important, because what you can do is what we call act on intent campaigns. And this is triggering communication based on a behavior or a specific need that customer have right now, and then trigger communication. And this is actually, we've learned the last few years, the most profitable and most successful type of communication you can do. So what we typically see is when we do this type of real-time act on intent campaigns, we can see an uplift that is maybe 10 to 5 times higher than usually in different types of campaigns. The next one challenge is scalability, because let's say if you're only going to do, use a few data sources, and we don't have data that are, so detailed or in depth, and only want to use a few channels, maybe 1 or 2 channels, and if you also want to do communication, a lot of channels, and just do a few use cases, maybe you don't need a CDP. That's maybe not for you in that case. But if you want to use many data sources, in-depth data, you want to use many channels, you want to do many use cases, maybe 50 or 100 use cases, then you really need a CDP. Okay, we talked about the challenges. Let's now see what type of communication capabilities that an omnichannel setup could give with a CDP. So traditionally, if you look at the communication organizations are doing today, if you look at the email platform, there are typically the types of campaigns you do are more like customer lifecycle campaigns, like onboarding, churn campaigns and whatnot, and also personalized calendar campaigns and so forth. If you look at the web channel, typically organizations, if they do anything, they do sort of web personalization based on clickstream data in real time, like product recommendations or content recommendations and whatnot. And if you go to the paid media, usually organizations use the data in those specific platforms like Facebook or Google for target and personalization, and also using third-party cookies. But if you add a CDP to the mix, you can actually start to do a lot more in these channels. So for instance, an email, you can do act on intent campaigns that we talked about just earlier. And then you can, if you look in the web and app, you can do custom lifecycle campaigns like an onboarding in the app. You can do personalized calendar campaigns. And if you look at the paid media channels, we all know that third-party cookies is sort of its end of its life cycle. So we need to replace them in some way. And then you can actually push down the data, the clickstream data from a web and app to the CDP, connect it to a customer ID, and then it's actually first-party data. And first-party data you're very welcome to share with the paid media platform. And then you can do the sort of act on intent campaigns like a banner basket and whatnot as well in paid media. But also you can do like customer lifecycle campaigns and or personalized calendar campaigns in paid media, which typically are very successful. In addition to this, you can actually add more channels to the mix. So for instance, point of sale, your stores or your call centers. So meaning that you can push offers or recommendations or where you sort of nudge the customer to the cashier, and she could have a dialogue with the customer and try to affect that customer. That could, for instance, be personal discounts that push the customer to try new brand, try new types of products or whatnot, and that actually can help you to develop that customer. Okay, now we talked about sort of the super introduction and basic stuff around omnichannel personalization. So then let's go into the CDP and what the CDP is. So going through the definition, capabilities, and the types of CDPs. Mats just mentioned one definition of CDP, and we have sort of pretty similar, but a little bit different, I would say. On the left-hand side, you can see the definition that is from the CDP Institute. The CDP Institute is an organization where a lot of the CDPs are members of. But in order to explain this a little better, a little bit more in depth, we have sort of tried to illustrate what this means in reality. on the right-hand side on this slide. So, of course, the main capability, the basic capability of a CDP is data management, and that means integrating with different data sourcing, injecting data to the CDP, and also structure the data in a way that is usable, so you can use it for customer interaction and personalized customer interaction. So this is sort of a core capability. Then we have identity resolution that also Mats mentioned, and this is a capability to make sure that one customer only have one customer ID in your customer database. So let's say if I'm a member of your loyalty program, maybe I subscribe to a newsletter, maybe have a login to your web and app, and potentially that means I have 3 different customer IDs in your data. And of course that means if I want to communicate relevant with me, if you want to do that, then it's a problem. So in CDPs you'll be able to implement business rules to automatically make sure that you merge those identities together and make sure that one customer only have one customer ID. The next capability is around profiling, customer profiling, and you probably have a pretty good understanding what this is. So using different types of business rules and algorithms to describe the customer in specific ways, like segmentation or some propensity scoring or something like that. And then we have activation. And activation is the capabilities to trigger communication based on business rules and algorithms. For example, based on some specific behavior that could trigger a communication or dialogue or a campaign. And then we have the personalization part. So even you and me might be in the same segment and we're triggered in the same campaign. We have different preferences. So we need to sort of personalize the content that is presented to us. So let's say if it's product recommendations in this communication, that means that you and me would have different product recommendations because we have different preferences. And then we have the orchestration part. And orchestration is the ability to do dynamic, multi-step campaigns or communications across channels. So, for instance, maybe I am in your website and have some specific behavior. And then that would probably trigger an email campaign to me, an email to me. And depending if I open the email or not, that could render, let's say, a Facebook ad. That is, of course, personalized based on the fact that I'm in this campaign. And if I click on that, I will land on your web. And then, once again, I will get a personalized experience based on the fact that I'm part of this campaign right now. So this is the orchestration of communication around all these channels. Then there are some capabilities that some CDPs have and some CDPs have not. So, for instance, when it comes to prediction and scoring, analytics and reporting, some of the CDPs have a lot of built-in models. This could be really good if you don't have a big analytic team and produce all of these analytic models yourself. This could be a super good opportunity to use what's already in the platform. But some CDPs don't have any algorithm built in at all. And then when it comes to channels, some CDPs have built-in email platforms and some have not. Also, some CDPs might have some web and app personalization capabilities, typically not on the level as sort of a real web and app personalization engine, but to some extent. And then, of course, the CDP has the capability to integrate with all your communication channels. So that would be web app, email, paid media, call center, point of sale, and so forth. So these are sort of the core capabilities. And so far, so good. We could really hope that sort of this was all you need to know. But in reality, it's a little bit more complicated than that, unfortunately. So there are actually 4 different types of CDPs. So the first type is what's called marketing data integrators. And these are the types of platforms that really focus on the integrations with different channels, data ingestion and data management, preparing the data for communication and personalization. They are typically not so good at the orchestration part, the personalization part, the triggering part. They typically share audiences with other platforms or push all that data that is managed to another platform that actually handles the communication. Then we have smart hubs. Smart hubs, on the other hand, they really focus on the the orchestration, personalization, triggering part are really good at that point, but don't have the full set of capabilities when it comes to data management. So if you go for this solution, you need to have some sort of platform or data warehouse where you can sort of at least do the basic data management outside the CDP before you push it in. And then we have marketing clouds, CDPs. These are the types of CDPs that is a suite, is part of a suite of different platforms that come from the same vendor. So that means you have only vendor for all your market automation platforms. A little bit challenge if you use this is if you want to use some sort of third-party platform, a platform some other vendor to integrate with the CDP, there typically are some challenges making that integration work really well, and the data flow and audience sharing and whatnot. So that could be something to think about. And the last one is CDP engines and toolkits, and these are typically open source platforms, and this is what your IT department want to use if they want to build their own CDP. This is something we recommend only if you have very, very specific requirements that can't be met of any CDP supplier on the market, because to build your own CDP is hard, complicated. I wouldn't go there personally. And also, if you look at the left-hand side, you can see how Gartner have positioned these different types of CDPs. And I think one interesting part there is that also is a huge benefit of CDPs, at least some CDPs, is you put the resources and the capabilities of a CDP in the hands of the marketer. So relying less on back-end development and the data warehouse team and so forth, and being able to do more use cases once you have sort of established a CDP without being in the hands of IT, and making it more, little bit more marketing-driven, so to speak, or business-driven. Okay, and that said, there are a lot of CDP suppliers on the market. These are the ones that we feel and think fits the definition of CDP on the European market. There are also other CDPs that work in Asia or India or whatnot that maybe don't serve the European market. But as you see, there are a lot of CDPs to choose from. We have the traditional marketing clouds like Salesforce and Adobe is here today as well. And then we have the data integrators. It's not as many as the Smart House, but there are a few of them, including MParticle, we also will present here today. And look at the Smart Hubs, you have a number of CDPs to choose from. And as I said, this is a little bit tricky and there's a lot of platforms out there that they say they are CDP, but actually don't meet all the required criteria. And then probably, a number of people that really know the CDP market would sit in the same room. They would probably not have exactly the same definition, and which are these actually CDPs and not. But you see there are a lot of ones to choose from. So the challenge is, if you want to go for a CDP implementation, which CDP would be right for you? And this is a little bit of a challenge. And I would say, and really recommend, that you really do your homework and make sure you define all your business requirements, because there are huge differences between these CDPs, even the CDPs that is, let's say, in the Smart Hub area. And you typically would set up this type of grid where you start to sort of define your use cases and requirement in those types of setup. But just to give you some examples on why this is a little bit tricky. So if we deep dive just into a few of those sort of specific requirements. So take, for instance, if you have a loyalty program, and in this loyalty program you can group your customers in households. And of course you want to use that to communicate with households rather than with individuals. Some CDPs have support for this, some CDPs have don't. And you really need to make sure, if that's a question for you, that you have the right CDP. Maybe you want to deploy your native models, your own models in the platform. Let's say a predictive model or a churn score or something like that. Some CDPs have the capability to implement those types of platforms or types of algorithms in the platform. Some have not. If you maybe want to use your CDP to have a really full integration with paid media, then not just sharing audiences, but also pushing product feed, content feed, and whatnot. And some CDPs have that capability, but some have not. So you really, really need to make sure that you do your homework before you start to meet with the CDP suppliers. Sort of what we have experienced, some of, organizations that want to implement the CDP do is they invite a number of CDP vendors, and then they have demos with them, and based on those demos they sort of select the one that sort of feels that this is the best one for them. And if you do that and you haven't done your homework and really deep dive into requirements, you might end up with a CDP that doesn't really work for you. And unfortunately, we've been contacted a number of times lately with clients that have implemented or bought the CDP, and during the implementation realizes that there are some key requirements that actually are not met. Okay. So this was a little bit about CDP, definition, capabilities, and types. I hope you learned something so far. Okay, we've implemented CDPs for the last 5 years, so we think we have made a lot of mistakes, of course, and by making mistakes we also learn a lot of stuff. And here are some of the sort of key learnings and key success factors that we see if you want to do a successful implementation of a CDP. So first of all, you really, really need to see this as a business implementation project and not as an IT implementation or IT project. Because what you want to do is, of course, to grow your business, to make sure that you get the best value of your data and have the best types of customer interaction you could have. And if you see this as an IT project, you will certainly get an implementation of a CDP, but you will not sort of get the business benefits of it. So this is super important. In order to do this, you need to make sure that you get the key stakeholders on board. I would say both on the business side and also on the IT side, making sure that the business really understand what they can use the CDP for growing their business, what type of new use cases they can do, new ways of approaching the customers, maybe new ways of doing business, and make sure that they are part of this transformation and actually driving the transformation. Next part is what we call way of working or cross-functional collaboration. If you've been in sort of communicated in silo channels with your customer, then you sort of can get by having sort of the different functions working with the different channels working in silo. But if you have communication or customer dialogues that goes in the same dialogue, you go through a number of channels which I've already described, then it's virtually impossible to do that without working on the daily basis together. So that typically means you set up cross-functional teams, maybe one team that take care of one part of the customer journey, and then you will gather resources from the CRM team, outbound email communication, from the digital team handling the web personalization, from paid media team, but also including analytic resources, content resources, whatever resources you need in order to make sure that it works. And they work together on a daily basis in this team, and they typically use agile methodology to really be able to scale this. And this is super important. I think if you go for an omnichannel implementation and don't do this, you will be in deep problem. Okay, then the last one is to take a step-by-step approach. So this means these types of implementation can take time, they can be quite big, and you need to make sure that you don't do too many mistakes during the way. And one way to do that is to take this in step. So maybe starting by using data from one source or a few sources, doing one channel, doing just a few use cases to start with, and then as you go along, you build more use cases and new use cases, and you learn a lot of stuff during the way, and you have an opportunity to optimize and learn, and this will actually make sure that the use cases you implement actually brings value to your business and your customer. Okay, thank you so much. Super fast crash course in omnichannel personalization and in CDPs. This short version in 20 minutes. We have a longer version, which could be anything from an hour to 2 hours. And if you're interested in it, please contact me and we can deep dive into whichever area that is most interesting for you. Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Hannes.
Thank you.
It's very, I would say, a very good start.
Yeah.
Overview over the platforms and what you need it for. You mentioned, I mean, I recognize what you mentioned about the CDP vendors. Everyone is a CDP vendor.
Yeah.
When the topic got hot,
Yeah.
then I see it's the same with marketing automation. I believe
Yeah.
the email marketing platform is a suddenly MA platform,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But how do you realize what is what when you're a buyer?
That's quite tricky, I would say. You would need to go through sort of the requirements and make sure that what you talked about and what I talked about is actually that they have all these capabilities. And one way to do it, that sort of, if you really need to be sure, that is if you detail your use cases when you have during the procurement process, and the vendor needs to say, okay, do we apply or not apply or semi-apply, then you have a better understanding of exactly what capability. And really good to state them very specific, very detailed, because otherwise the vendors could say, yeah, we sort of have this capability, and they think, we can do some workaround or whatnot. And those workarounds tend to be very harmful as you start the implementation.
Good, and I usually also say to companies when they ask me about, like for MA, for example, that look at the history, where they're coming from. If they're coming from email marketing, maybe they're very good at email marketing, but maybe not as good as the other channels. So.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the CDPs don't have a history before CDPs. Some of them are started as CDPs, and maybe that's a good way to go for it. But of course, there are a number of coming from other areas.
You mentioned also the real-time capabilities to be able to react on the real-time data.
Yeah.
Is that something that is the big advantage from using a CDP, or is that? Yeah.
A little bit cautious here, but not all CDPs have this capability. Some are actually batch-oriented, so you need to make sure. But the event-based architecture, I think and that means that if some data point changes for one customer, that can trigger an event from a sending system, pushing new data into the CDP, and the CDP can react on that in real time. And I think that comes in a big way going forward. I think that's a sort of a game changer.
The good thing with being part of the online session here now is that, of course, that you can send in questions to Daniel. And Daniel, I think we have a question.
Yeah, we got one question, and that is, what do you think about the composable CDP approach in terms of cost and benefits compared to the all-in-one solutions?
Yeah, that's a little bit tricky question. Usually we go for what we call a best-of-breed approach, meaning you pick the different types of platforms that sort of fit your needs the best. So that's one obvious. Also, these types of more new platforms tend to be a little bit easier to implement and maybe get a little bit more support from the vendors. If you go for using one vendor for all your MarTech stack, then you need to make sure you have to have a really good partner, I would say, and typically it could cost a little bit more and take a little bit more time. So to be honest, I would go for the best of breed approach, actually.
Good. B2B, B2C, is there any difference in terms of the usage or relevance?
No, I think if you B2B is sort of two parts. One is the customer acquisition part, which is becoming digital and data driven in a way it hasn't been before. And then I think maybe CDP could have some role in that. But of course, when it comes to the existing customer and growing those accounts and growing that business, I think it's essentially exactly the same. Even though the B2B I haven't really gotten this far. And doing this, but I think there are a lot of opportunities here. To be honest, I think the B2B area is also now going through sort of where the B2C area was like 4, 5, 6 years ago, where this is where B2B is today. So I think we'll see the next 5 years, we'll see a huge transformation where B2B is really getting data-driven as well.
Exactly. More, not only CDP, you mean, but broader perspective that you need.
But CDP, of course, if you want to go omni-channel, would apply in the same way as for B2C.
Yeah, very exciting. Of course, all the B2B customer contacts are also consumers, so get used to the way they do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question. Do you have more questions?
No further questions.
What about, I mean, you said that you and your colleagues done a lot of implementations together with customers. When you do it the first time, or I mean, maybe you only do it once as a company, what is the best role if you're going to use a consultant? What is the best role for the consultant to be part of the project?
I would say it's first of all to help them to set out sort of the business objectives, what are actually what going to achieve with the CDP, what are the business values we want to create, not starting from a tech point, and helping out to build the roadmap, because you need the roadmap in order to build this, and also build a business case. You actually see, do we have a good business case for this? Then this, I would say, supporting during the implementation. I think the business side is even more important than the tech side, helping to organization to understand. And last but not least is implementing new ways of working, because that is really the key, to have a new way of working, a cross-functional way of working to support this.
Thank you, Hannes.
Thank you so much.
So it's time for the next speaker, and this time we're going to talk about how to build sustainable and strategic customer approach. So all the way from Stuttgart, Germany, Head of Product Marketing at Adobe, please meet Axel Schäfer. Welcome, Axel.
Morning.
Morning.
Nice to meet you. Good to be here. Thank you.
So thank you. And I mean, it's spring in Stuttgart now, or is it still winter as here?
It's not quite as nice as here. See the snow falling outside. So it is cold, but not quite as cold as in Sweden. So
Okay. So I understand that you have a little bit different approach, as also Hannes mentioned, more than maybe the best of breed approach, more the platform approach. Is that correct?
I think that there's a few central elements that we need to fulfill when we think about CDPs, and that's a higher level even for me. So I'll go into that in just a second. Hence, I believe we need to look at it as one holistic approach, so to say. But again, I don't want to take all the thunder out of my own presentation. So I guess that's what I'm going to focus on the next few minutes as well.
Perfect. Welcome. Stage is yours.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Really happy to be here. My name is Axel Schäfer, based in Germany, responsible for Adobe's product around EMEA, so mostly Europe in this case. As a role, as a product marketer at Adobe, it's definitely my strategic intent, my personal experience, my personal drive as well, to have a vision. So I want to start this presentation to go at a very high level into how we look at CDPs and why we believe CDPs are strategic and a sustainable, hopefully sustainable element of your future customer experience, and why that matters so much. So if you think about customer experience, there's two elements. And that is not only starting with you, that's actually starting with your customers. Your customers have an expectation. They have an expectation to deal with brands that give you a great experience. That experience has to be in real time. That experience has to be fluid. That experience has to be whatever they expect at any point of time, at any device, at any channel that they choose to. On the other side, you're challenged with, how can I stand out from others? Again, coming back to these elements. How can you surprise your customers with this? All of that plays very much at some very basic expectations that your customers have, but they're very essential when it comes to a CDP and how a CDP can play that role within your tech stack. So that said, pretty sure that you're thinking about it for quite a while, that you've been thinking about, how does it fit into my broader approach? How does management look at this? How can the CDP complement what we already have in place? So there's quite a few different elements of customer experience that play a role here. You can see probably more than one that you are involved in, that you're responsible for, that plays a part within this entire approach. So it's very, very hard to decide where to start and how to approach this. Obviously everybody has got a different opinion on this, and that's another part of the challenge that you see when you think about a CDP, that it needs to bring all these different elements together. Now, more than this, you're probably looking at maps. Hannes has just mentioned it, Mats has mentioned it before, maps of customers that look like this. Now, Hannes mentioned best of breed is the way to go. And to some extent, I could agree. However, I think when you believe into this holistic vision of making that customer experience a reality, and again, I'm a product person, I really want to look at this. how could the ideal state be? When I talk to customers like yourselves, I look at them and I think, what would be the ideal state, regardless of potential hurdles, regardless of potential conflicts? How could the ideal state look like? And that's when I struggle a little bit with this approach of best of breed. You can see you've got a lot of choices. You've got a lot of different vendors that have a specification in one area. Again, Hannes went into a lot of details of how that could make sense for a very specific customer, and it does. Yet, I want to caution when we talk about tools that have not been made to work together. That can potentially, as a CDP and an implementation of a CDP, rightfully so, is not a very simple project per se, that we get into a lot of complexity if we choose too many specific vendors. However, I want to, again, look at this a little bit more from another side, and that side is from your side. A lot of different information is available about CDPs. This is probably not your first event you've attended for CDPs. This is not the first presentation you've seen about CDPs. There's a lot of information. I've just highlighted a few things that I found myself and just put them on a slide around how can you cut through this information? How can you make sure that you're really sure what to pick? And that is not only from a tech perspective, that is also very much so from a understanding how you as an organization are set up. How can you as an organization make sure that you are in the right state for whatever is a CDP? What is a CDP? So that said, at Adobe, we're working with quite a lot of organizations in that discussion, like yourselves, and finding their way to what a CDP should look like for them. Now at Adobe, we are looking at 3 different types of customers. And that's very simplified. I do understand that that's not as simple as reality looks. Looking at curious customers, looking at prepared customers, and we're looking at advanced customers. Now each of those have some very specific attributes. And I would be very interested in just a second to find out, who are you thinking you are? For that, I want to just give you a little bit more information about each of them. So the curious customers for us really have heard about CDPs, are interested, curious, have an understanding that, with the third-party depreciation, a third-party cookie depreciation, for example, you need to do something to move from first-party to third-party, where a CDP ideally plays a very big role. However, there's no defined use cases. We have not gone into exploration of how could a CDP replace certain other capabilities, but it's interesting. Yet the team on the other side, from not a tech perspective, but from an organizational one, has not gotten a lot of experience with CDPs, with potentially bringing different parts of the organizations together, and also hasn't done a lot of AI adoption, for example, beforehand. Now, on the other hand, which makes it much more simpler, these kinds of customers are typically driven strictly from a business perspective. There's no IT involvement. It's very much a project that's still shaped within, for example, the marketing department. Yet, again, to Hannes's point earlier, there's not a clear strategy that can be seen, that can be, applied to how the CDP should then be working in the future. There's no long-term plan. It's just about interest, making sure that we're doing something. Let's see how we can get into what potentially could be a CDP. Next to it, and it's probably, a lot of you guys thinking you are prepared, is the prepared customers, where we have thought about some standard use cases, some things that you want to do. Again, Hannes has given quite a few examples already. Some experience with adopting AI capabilities, machine learning, for example, and somewhat of a joint understanding of this is what we can do, this is what our IT department needs to then focus on. In the end, we can probably sum it up with there's a clearer strategy of how a CDP should be used in the organization. There's an understanding of complexities, budgets, whatnot. So there's definitely a solid base for that. And then there are the advanced customers, where potentially teams have been formed years ago. A lot of stuff has been built in-house already to a point. Customers have experiences and have potentially hired a lot of data scientists to do AI and ML capabilities. Definitely IT plays a very stronger part. As I mentioned, there might be some things that have been built or implemented internally already. And definitely there's a very, very clear and very advanced strategy of where you want to get with that. So that said, there's 3 different types. Daniel, could I ask you to start the first poll maybe for this?
Absolutely.
All right, good to see. I wasn't so wrong. Good to see. Can see the results coming in now. We've got a very even balance between curious. So just at the start, getting yourselves around. Curious is actually picking up. We got a lot of curious people on the call on the event today. Same as prepared. We've got a few advanced. Implemented probably CDPs already, but it's fair to say curious and prepared are probably 90%, and that's evenly split between the two. So very much with you, and that, by the way, does not differ between Sweden specifically or other countries too much. We see quite a lot of organizations that are in these stages when we look at it, as I do for my role across the European horizon or European landscape. So it's good to see that a lot of you have already started these conversations, thinking about use cases, but it's also fair, and again, I really appreciate that you sometimes are at the beginning and you need to have some more direction of where you want to go. That said, I want to, hopefully help a little bit more with this direction and go in some challenges that we see with our customers. So usually, and again, this is something that may not be new, but is essential when we come back to that meta view of having this fluid customer experience that we all strive to, that our customers expect, and that we would like to deliver, that are around basically four bigger buckets for things. It's around making sure that we are working with tools that are working together, and they actually do. So we can avoid things like high latency. We can avoid that the time aspect really stops us from making sure that experience works. Yeah? Who wants to wait when they are at a certain, a certain retail store? Who wants to wait for the experience for that coupon that comes 10 minutes later? We need to have that in real time. We need to have that when the customer is ready to make the decision. The second one is much more essential. It's like, how can I actually get the data together? Is there a way of how this data can be sustainably brought together and put in a systematic way that we can use it? We can also govern it. We can make sure that we can fulfill privacy requests, for example. Third one, and also very essential one for us internally as we work with our customers, is making sure that we provide the right insights. CDP is not only for activation, it's not only for playing these messages to our customers, it's also for showing us what's really happening. So if we cannot bring that together, if we cannot have a clear expectation, if you don't have a propensity that is very high, we cannot really use the CDP to how it should be. And last but not least, I just mentioned it before, making sure that we respect our customers with the use of CDP, because with the responsibility of doing nearly perfect customer experiences comes the responsibility as well to respect our customers in that way as well. So not only do they expect to have that offer, to have that message at the right point in time, they also expect us to know when they don't want to do that. So when they want to be respected, to not receive a certain message from a certain product or a certain program that you're running. So making sure that we can also do that in an efficient way is really, really important. That said, I would like to, again, play a small poll, because I'm interested, I'm sure Hannes is, and I'm pretty sure you yourselves are as well. What are the biggest challenges that you see when you're thinking about a CDP as you want to implement it? So, Daniel, if you could run the second poll.
Yeah.
All right, coming in a little bit slow. Don't be shy. Here we go. All right, got quite a few good options, I see. I would say probably bringing your tools together, together with a more solid view of your data, are probably the two strongest one. I can also see, and I'm really appreciative of that governance is quite high in your responses as well. So cookie depreciation is not as high as it might have been a few months ago. So people are aware of what's coming. They're prepared. But yeah, governance has picked up now. So bringing tools together, making sure that the data is not as fragmented, and getting the governance together is actually the three most important aspects that you guys are looking at. So that's good to see. When we think about these challenges, we need to also think about how can we avoid running into shortcuts. And again, probably every organization has to look at it in their very own way, in their very specific way. Yet, when we look at how can we make a sustainable decision, and I titled my presentation today on purpose, sustainable decisions on CDPs. It's not about getting a CDP in your organization really quick. It's making sure that you pick the right CDP approach, one way or another, with a sustainable future in mind. That you think about how can you make sure that the CDP decision, which sits in the center of your customer experience strategy going forward, is the one that you can build on, not only for a year, but for 3 years, 5 years, and potentially even longer. I'm fully on board with my co-presenters, with Mats as well, that there's quite some dynamic that we will see in the CDP market. So I don't think we all can foresee what is a CDP and what is a CDP used for in, let's say, 3 years. However, I am fairly certain that I look at elements within a CDP approach, or within a data management approach even more so, that are important to sustain over the next time. I've listed them on the slide here for you. So one for me is making sure that you can get the data in as flexibly, as quickly, and as smoothly, and that means not manual, ideally, as you can. So let's make sure that that part is sorted. The second one, and I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second, how can I make sure that I can drive real benefit? So at Adobe, we've chosen the approach of a unified profile, again, which I'll touch on in a small second. I've dwelled on governance, which is the third one, already quite a bit, so I'll jump over that quickly. And the last one is really making sure that you're not handicapped, that you're not hindered in where you can activate your data when it comes out of a CDP going forward. So, switching gears, where do I really start? So where should I really go to make sure I start with the CDP approach in the right way? Now it starts, as we look at it at Adobe, with a unified profile. That needs to be actionable, that needs to be possible to be amended at any point in time. There's different aspects that play into a profile like this. There's personal attribute data. For example, you see, who are they? Definitely, some demographic aspects in there. There's some behavioral data that you can obviously pull in that add to that profile. There's preferences that should be playing into that. And last but not least, there's also audience information. So where do they belong to? Can I create a segment out of that? That all adds that profile information. That profile needs to be brought together. That all profile needs to be managed and also needs to be erased where it's needed, where it's desired by the customer. Now, when it comes to then actual building blocks, where it becomes to features of a CDP platform, we're looking at three elements or three building blocks that are really essential. One is data collection, which brings together the known data, probably less of an issue in your organization, with the unknown data, which is probably more of the challenge. On the other side, we want to make sure that we activate that data, not only within the customer systems that we have available, but also on site, for example, for personalization, or further out in the environment for paid media, for example, as well, and social media and such. All that comes together in that unified profile that I just mentioned. At Adobe, we are bringing together different elements that play into this. Most importantly for me is the open approach that we have to a data model. So what you see as XDM in the middle is a standardized data model, where we have looked at how can organizations, despite their very diverse structure of data that they have in place, bring that together in a standardized way, and they can then make sure that they can use it and go forward with that. You'll assume, and you'll rightfully so think, that Adobe has got quite a lot of connections into different systems. I listed them on this slide just for making sure that you know that we do have them. I don't want to at all go into details for that. Be assured, whatever organization, whatever vendor you're working with, most likely we already have a connector for that. We mentioned the potential of a CDP as a strategy tool beforehand as well. So making sure that CDPs are not only seen as a technical tool, well, they are likely bringing together different elements, as I mentioned in the very beginning of my presentation. They are much more so an enabler to bring the organization together around the customer. And that's why I want to bring it back together, bring it back to your customers as I'm closing out my presentation. We talked about different business models beforehand. So at Adobe, we have thought about that as well. So we have different editions, as we call them, for B2C, for B2B, and it's a hybrid version, where it's basically personal information as well as account information that can be brought in together. So for us, a CDP needs to be working in either of those, and happy to expand on that. Hannes also mentioned a couple of takeaways, and I don't want to go into every single one of them. But again, when you look at these, and I don't need to read through these, you see there's a lot of potential in there. Be it from scale, where we're looking at nearly 1 billion profiles that can be managed, to lifting conversion, or bringing down latency, bringing down the time that's needed to act in your customer information, to a really significantly lower and real-time focused approach. With that, I want to close it out and leave you with my pledge for think about how can you make sure that your data management is really sustainable. That's for me the core aspect of, I do not want you, either of you, to make sure to take a decision that's not the decision that you stand behind in the next few years. It's really important to think about not everything on this circle, but quite a few things. So take this, look at this circle, take a screenshot, think about the elements that are on here, and making sure that they're considered when you think about going forward for a CDP decision. With that, I think I'm 2 minutes over. I'll hand it back to Hannes.
Thank you. Welcome.
Cheers.
Thank you, Axel. Very, very interesting, and a good next step after Hannes' presentation, I believe.
When I get into talking, I'm starting talking, so apologies.
That's good. It's better than the other way around. We seen from our first question in the poll about that we are lagging kind of behind in terms of a lot of companies maybe in the future planning for it, but implementing a CDP. But the other results from the other polls that you had, do you see any differences from the rest of Europe and the world, or?
Not hugely. I think it depends really. The aspect of data governance is probably one that's sometimes higher. I think it's, for example, the UK, there's less touchy feelings around that. But in general, I think quite a lot of organizations just are really in the midst of, I need to orient myself, and very much from a functional perspective, less so the organizational part, because we tend to jump to this is the tool that we need, and let's make sure that the tool's the right. A lot of organizations that we walk into, they haven't done their, Hannes called it, do their homework first. And I think that's really what I want to motivate people to do, come together, customer experience. That's why I made a very broad statement in the beginning. We need to bring people together. We need to define a currency, which is the customer, that brings everyone together. The CDP then will do that from a technical perspective, because for me, that's the strategic brain that pulls in activation, data collection. At Adobe, we have this platform. We have other solutions around, the CDP that will make that a sensible setup. But if you're not having that bigger vision in mind, it will always be pieces that then stretch you at some point.
So and I mean the second poll you had, it was the top answers was fragmented data and disconnected tools, but the customer expectations were pretty low, right? But I start to think when companies more and more implement CDP and make it possible to also be active on the online data and real-time data and so on, will the customer expectations increase in terms of how companies behave? And
I mean, the question is, are we asking the right questions? Like, you know, I'm very much on board with everyone that you know that participates today in the call, but we need to really think about, are we really offering our customers, are we asking the questions like, are you satisfied with our customer experience? Are you just satisfied with, you know, with the purchase today, with the offer today, whatnot? So I think it's a good mix between the two elements where we need to, you know, just have that in mind. In the end, it's a subliminal decision that customers are taking about preferring another brand. It's got a lot of other elements that play into it, but we need to be aware that smooth transition from, you know, offer payment process, you know, it goes beyond pure marketing, that full, you know, life cycles of a customer to, you know, potentially be a return customer then as well, that's important for us to look at.
And when you if you want to implement a CDP then in the future, if you look at best practices, industries, geographies, where should you look?
We've seen quite a lot of financial services organizations who have been very, very bullish about making sure that they have got the right approach in place, also from a governance perspective. So they've pressure tested our systems for sure. But I think I would probably look at what banks are doing at the moment, because they've got fairly strict regulations as well to look at. Otherwise, I think it's all over the place. I think there's good examples, and again, for me, it's really around, you know, what is the vision that you want to implement? You know, I talked to a travel vendor recently, and they had some resorts where it's around real time when people have actually checked in. So it could be very different business models again that could be applied. But really, what is your use case? And that's why I come together with Hannes again. To be honest, I think it's all about getting clear what you want to do as a use case with that tool, not looking at the tool as the tool will tell me what to do. The tool can do pretty much everything. At least, you know, for Adobe, I can tell you there's a lot of things that you could do with it, but if you're not aware what you want to do, then the tool will not necessarily tell you what to do. So I think there's quite a lot of internal, and, you know, with partners, with consultancies like Hannes' firm, it's important that we have that conversation, that we have that discussion to grow before we then, you know, just put it on the tool and like, let's go.
Thanks, very good. Thank you, Axel, sorry, for coming here to Stockholm studio. And now it's time for a break, but don't miss, Klarna tells you about, after the break, how to build customer-centric organization based on a CDP. You know Klarna very well. So see you soon again, have a nice break, and take a cup of coffee. Welcome back, all of you, to the studio here in Stockholm, Sweden, and we still have the winter here and it's snowy. But here it's warm in the studio, and it's time to meet some new speakers. And it's how Klarna built a customer-centric organization based on CDP. And we will also meet MParticle. So welcome on stage, Digital Transformation Director at MParticle, Henry Church.
It's good to be here again.
Thank you.
Nice
Nice to see you again. And no Christmas sweater this time?
No, just the snow this time. Just the snow, but no Christmas jumper. I was going to wear my Valentine's Day jumper, but we're a week too late.
Too late, yeah. Its timing is everything, right?
It is.
So, and also I would like to introduce and welcome Gaia Del Mauro and Satrajit Basu from Klarna. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and all you are coming all the way from. I wouldn't say that because you're still in Berlin.
Yeah.
We are like confused here in Stockholm because we believe Klarna is a Swedish company. Where are you doing in Berlin? Sounds nice, though. Okay, so I mean, I think I leave stage to you now, Henry.
That's absolutely fine, Mats. Hand over. Right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for having us today as well. I thought I'd start off by introducing MParticle very briefly, because you aren't really here to hear from me, you're here to hear from Klarna. But MParticle is the #1 AI-powered customer data platform in the world. We help our customers solve data challenges and unlocking personalization use cases at companies such as Klarna, such as Airbnb, Spotify, Discovery Plus, Starbucks, to just name a few. But that's enough from me. I'll hand over to you, Guy, to introduce what Klarna does for those who may not be aware.
Of course, thank you. So like you said, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Klarna, but in short, Klarna started as a payment provider in 2005. However, today, Klarna is also a global shopping destination for over 150 million active customers globally, and in partnership with over 450,000 integrated merchants. Today, I'm representing the CRM data team, and our mission is to provide a consistent data view of Klarna consumers so that we can enable CRM teams across the company to reach out to the right user at the right time on the right channel. And we are therefore creating together a relevant and personalized shopping experience for all our consumers. Today with me is also Satrajit, who is our engineering manager.
Yeah, thank you, Gaia. So, actually, thank you all for asking us in this event. And yeah, as Gaia said, we are using MParticle for as our CDP, and we are getting a lot of value add. So next slide, please.
Yes, just to build on that then, and the million-dollar question is, we've established that you're working with MParticle, but how do Klarna actually use the MParticle CDP today?
Sure, I can answer to this. To the next slide, please. Thank you. So mainly the main thing is that for us to create unified user profiles, which means that we are collecting custom attributes and events that are being streamlined from different dashboards, which includes the Klarna apps, the Klarna website, and merchant website. And this is the main thing. On top of this, we are enriching these profiles with other real-time calculations. And this is including calculated attributes and audiences so that we can create additional insights and segmentation tools. Finally, all the collected data is forwarded to connected outputs. And these outputs can be CRM automation tools, but also analytics tools to allow our CRM teams to get insights and build personalized journeys for our consumers.
Yeah. Thank you. So giving a little bit insight. The engineering side, we have a lot of pipeline which is coming into the MParticle. We manage the pipeline and the data when it comes into MParticle. It creates the magic of unified user profile, and then it goes out. And we also have a nice control of the users who have given permission for being sent. We send them the marketing information or email or contacts. Using one filter, we can filter out billions of events attributes.
For some people watching, this might look like quite a lot. There's quite a lot going on. There's lots of data flows here. People might be thinking we aren't mature enough for this. We're a bit worried about maybe undertaking a task like this. What they probably don't realize is you're 5 years into your CDP journey and you didn't start with this. Would you maybe be able to talk people through how you started and what that journey's looked like over time?
Sure. So we started in 2018, and we started by using the core platform. The core platform is the component that was allowing us to simply managing the data flows from data producers to data activators. And so basically, as of today, we are managing data that is coming from over 100 teams. And the core platform is what we started with. Then as Klarna started to put more and more focus on personalization, we started to experiment with real-time products such as calculated attributes and audiences, because this is allowing us to create more personalization. After that, we also experimented with data planes as a tool to enforce some control on the data quality. And finally, as of this year, we adopted the new pricing model that MParticle is offering. And this new pricing model is good for us because it allows us to have a bit more visibility and understanding on the cost structure based on the event volume and better governance of this aspect as well.
Yes. And this data plan actually helped us to maintain the data quality and also gives us the insight of, receiving any unplanned data, which is very important for us. And this gives us the control to reduce unwanted data into the CDP system, which we don't want. In that terms, we can increase the governance as well.
Obviously, you guys have been working on the CDP for some time, and people listening may be thinking this sounds like an interesting process, but I would imagine the conversations people are having internally are not only what could we use a CDP for, but who is actually going to own the CDP internally? Who's going to be responsible for it? That's going to involve change management. Would you maybe be able to touch briefly on how Klarna have adopted those processes internally and kind of who uses the platform, who owns it, and who sees the benefits?
Sure. So given that we are managing sensitive customer data, we have a centralized ownership structure, which means that our team, CRM data team, is the only team that is allowed to access the tool, make changes within the tool. And this is because we have the right level of training and experience to do so. And our team is including a group of engineers, data scientists, analysts, and product with myself. For us, the main benefit from this point of view is the ability to enforce some clear governance on data access. And our customers, our internal customers, are mainly marketing teams. We are working with over 25 teams from marketing companies and from customer activation, customer conversion across the entire customer journey. And they are requesting events and attributes to us, and this is done through a ticketing process. However, for them, the main benefit is a reduced time to market in many instances where we don't need to rely on development in order to create audiences or calculated attributes, for example.
Yeah. So as Guy mentioned that we are handling with a lot of sensitive data. So we have a huge responsibility to maintain that. And that's why we don't give access to even to the data producers. So we have multiple teams who actually generate data, and through the pipeline, it reaches the CDP system, but even they don't have access. And moreover, when the data goes out to two different systems, like Braze or Amplitude, they see the data what being shown in those applications. Even they don't have access to the actual CDP.
Thank you very much, guys. I mean, it's always interesting hearing how different companies are operationalizing the CDP internally, and it sounds like at Klarna it's very much on the CRM team to own it. But of course, that doesn't always have to be the way. That's just how Klarna have set it up based on your use cases. And speaking of use cases, we've heard about your data maturity, we've heard about your journey and your tactics and your ownership. But what I think people really want to understand is actually what do you use the CDP for day to day? What are those use cases? And both Gaia and Satyajit, when we were preparing for this presentation, you spoke a lot about personalization, and it's mentioned on quite a few of these slides already as well. Could you maybe talk us through how the CDP has helped Klarna really drive towards personalization as one of your main strategic initiatives?
Of course, I will start with the first use case, which is presented here. And with this use case, the business objective, the goal of Klarna, is to increase the number of signups to the Klarna card and enhance the purchase frequency of users. And this is done through personalized communication, which is created by leveraging the combination of our internal machine learning in combination with MParticle in order to allow us targeting the right customer with Klarna card related CRM. So if we go to the next slide, we can look into this flow where we have Francis. Francis is a loyal Klarna customer. He's using the app a lot, many times. However, he doesn't have the Klarna card yet. Of course, we know this information because Francis' profile is created and stored within MParticle together with behavioral data, consent information, and also some predictive attributes, which are telling us that not only he doesn't have the Klarna card yet, but also that recommending to Francis to sign up for the Klarna card is the best action to recommend right now. And so this type of information is streamlined directly and in real time to our CRM automation tools so that Francis will receive a smart communication telling him that it's time to sign up for the Klarna card and benefit from its advantages.
Oh yeah. There are probably some people listening who are thinking, well, we can do that already. We can get that data from somewhere. We send a ticket. Why do you think the CDP has been essential to really unlocking this use case and driving the value of this use case for Klarna above and beyond the tools you mentioned, things like Amplitude and Braze?
Certainly, the fact that we are creating a unified profile, no matter what touch point the customer is utilizing to interact with Klarna, all the information is falling under the same profile. And also we have real-time capabilities and the ability to integrate different attributes, including our predictive attributes within the same profile in real time.
Thank you. Satyajit. Sorry, did you want to say something, Satyajit?
Yeah, I want to just add that it's not that easy. Maybe I believe if we understand that if we say any customer, so okay, blindly we can refer Klarna card, but that won't do any value add because the customer need to see the value add of Klarna card. Then it will convert. Otherwise, it will be just blindly saying, okay, use the Klarna card. Here, it is little difficult. So how Gaia mentioned, the behavioral data, real-time data, and the predictive models, all three together makes this possible. And we will see in the the later slides, the impact.
Later slides, Satyajit, I know that there was obviously Gaia's use case around the Klarna card. Maybe we can jump into one of your top CDP use cases for Klarna.
Of course. So the second use case is, again, the objective is to drive repeat purchases of customers. And in this case, we're looking at replenishment products. And what we want to do is to identify what is the right time to for engagement with each single one of our Klarna consumers. So if we go to the next slide, we can see the journey of Melissa. So Melissa is a very loyal customer. She's using Klarna across different touch points, and she just made a purchase at her favorite beauty store in the US for some beauty products. Her profile is built within MParticle, and again, together with consent information, purchase history, and predictive attributes, which are telling us what's the best time for Melissa specifically to repeat the purchase for the products she just bought. And thanks to this data flow, she will receive time for a refill CRM communication on her favorite CRM channel at right time. And yes, in the next slide, we can just see that thanks to these experiments that we're running around personalization, we can observe some significant increase in session and purchase rate as well across all the users that we are targeting with such user journeys.
Yeah, certainly. And here again, I believe the same question will come that it is also very simple. We can say that, okay, one shampoo can go up to maybe 1 month or so. Okay, just send the recommendation, but it's not that. I'll take one example of one red refill and blue refill. If you see, the blue one needs to be refilled like quite often than the red. So there is depending on the product. Also the personal usage. Also we know a lifetime of refill. So it's all a layered kind of approach. And with the machine learning, we have achieved a lot of accuracy here as well.
Satyajit, what do you mean by accuracy?
Yes, certainly. So we have seen like the recommendations what we are sending and the purchases are being happening are now have increased after recommendation. So we will see that, okay, we have sent the recommendation and the purchase happened. So it is more accurate, or the purchase did not happen. So it means the recommendation is not that accurate.
Okay, so I'm interested to know a bit more about this recommendation piece, because obviously some people are probably listening thinking, well, we're not Klarna, we don't have these resources available to us. But I've never heard in 10 years of working in technology anybody tell me we have too many data scientists. We have too many BI analysts. We don't know what to do with them all. So what has unloading some of this functionality to the CDP allowed Klarna to do that previously you were maybe being held back from or were limited to by resources?
Yeah. So data science, this prediction, these are very much dependent on the accuracy of the data and the correctness of the data. How correct, precise, accurate is the data we have been collected. Depending on that, the performance of the model we will see. So if the data is incorrect and we don't have adequate data, not only incorrect, we need the complete unified profile along with the behavioral data. So this full combination is powered by the CDP. Now, on top of that, we are running our machine learning model and it's working like that. So it's not only the model can show the magic, it requires data. So that is the base, you can say.
So I guess
For the foundation.
So I guess we've only been speaking for 20 minutes, but what it sounds like is these insights, these journeys that you're sending your consumers on, this personalization, it's all ultimately underpinned by a strong data foundation and having trust and having faith in the data that you are being created. And I guess that really is where the value of the CDP has been unlocked for Klarna, is that solid foundation of data collection and standardization, which has unlocked all of these opportunities for you over the last 5 years. Now, I've only got one more question before we hand over to the audience for their questions, but we've heard about what the last 5 years has looked like. What does the next 5 years look like for Klarna and the CDP? What's your plans?
So what I can say is that as of this year, we're also starting to experiment with the intelligent attributes offered by the tool, because this is a good feature for us to complement our own, let's say, internal predictive intelligence in order to basically reduce the time to market in some cases, and also be able to experiment earlier, let's say. So this is something that we are already trying to work with, and see how it will lead.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. Mats?
So thank you very much, both Henry and Gaia and Satyajit. Exciting to listen to what you're doing, actually. And Henry, you mentioned that was 5 years ago they started the project?
Yeah, 2018. So
gosh, did you hear that, all you that maybe plan for the future? Look at Klarna, that's a good experience. So Gaia, could you just mention, I mean, the in terms of the project, did you run that yourself, or did you have any consultants helping you?
What do you mean? Project? We are internally managing. So we, as CRM data team, basically we define the requirements in POC, and we define the use cases, and then mostly internally we bring it forward then.
Okay. I mean, in terms of organization then, where in the Klarna organization are you based, working with the CDP?
Yes, so I am the product manager and accountable lead for the CRM data team. So we are part of the Martech group and within a marketing domain. So basically I was not there back then in 2018. However, we are today owning the tool and serving our internal customers that are the CRM teams. And we are doing this mostly internally.
Okay. Henry, I mean, what is your experience from other customers around the world in terms of the organization and who should be responsible for the CDP?
It's an answer which isn't going to be helpful, Mats, but it really depends on what you're trying to do. Now, there's kind of three main utilizations for a CDP. You might be trying to fix your data foundations, fixing your pipelines, and starting at the beginning of your data maturity journey. You might have done that. You might be thinking about, now we've got our pipelines, we need to build a view of our customer. We need to get this persistent view. And what you're essentially building up to there is they're putting the building blocks in place to unlock personalization. That's almost what every single company is looking to do. But it depends where you are on that journey as to who's really going to own the product, who's going to own the project. And that's why we do find it very helpful sometimes when customers have got some kind of product owner internally, or they're working with a third party who can take on some of that early change management whilst the business is restructuring and reorging to understand exactly where it fits. Now, Klarna were very lucky. They had a few people involved in the business back in 2018 that were really real visionaries and really wanted to drive the product forward. We've seen that at some of our other customers as well. But in 2023, when the CDP is slightly more, it's more obvious, more people are leveraging them, there seems to be more of an idea to kind of get experts in. But obviously there's not very many experts because it's not been around very long. So it's a balancing act, and that's really what the vendor as a CDP, as MParticle, is there to do, is to help companies not only assess the technology, but also assess the change management internally at your business.
Good, thanks. And Gaia and Satrit, you mentioned also some other systems you're using Braze and Amplitude. I mean, we maybe shouldn't talk about just these vendors, but the functionality, what is the connection between the CDP and MParticle and these two systems in terms of functionality?
Yes, so we are using CRM automation tools and analytics tools as connected outputs to MParticle. So on MParticle, it is possible to add some connected inputs and outputs, and this is what we're using basically to streamline data to these platforms. At the same time, we're also using an API, Profile API, which is offered by MParticle and allows us to make user profiles available also across potentially all other channels, because it's an API that can be used and queried by all the other, let's say, teams and touchpoints.
Okay.
Yeah, and also like when it comes to the point of outputs, MParticle have, like, I believe almost if all the connectors available, which makes the engineering life easy. It should be connected seamlessly. It won't take much time and effort. And to answer your question on Braze and Amplitude, they have their own purpose, those tools. And mainly Braze is the engagement management platform and Amplitude is analytics. So they need, again, most accurate data to perform their job.
Good, thanks. And last question, you mentioned AI as a future possibility, right? Is that included in the MParticle platform, the CDP platform you have, or?
Yes, MParticle is today providing or including an AI module that can be utilized, and basically the prediction of the models that MParticle provides are shown in the format of custom attributes or intelligent attributes, and they can be used within the platform itself. We're just now starting to experiment with this functionality, but this is how it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Gaia, Saturit, Berlin, Klarna, and also Henry from the studio.
Thank you, Mats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, so now it's time for the next speaker, and we have a guest. We'll be discussing solving the cross-channel customer experience in a first-party world. And from all the way from Florida, USA, in the middle of the night, Head of Value Engineering at Tealium, Robin Geyer. Hello, Robin.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Fine. I mean, you look pretty fresh. Coming directly from the bar, or?
No, I got an early sleep for sure. So, I really wanted to make this happen. I wish I could have been there, but, things changed. And yeah, I wanted to make this happen. It's 4:38. So I'm very much looking forward to this.
And maybe you're jet lagged, so you're happy to be freshen up and early morning.
Yeah, in Germany, what, it's like 10:30 now, so you woke up early anyways. Jet lag.
That's true. That's true. Okay, thanks, Robin, for being with us in the middle of the night. But just stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Start sharing my screen here. Yes, so very excited to be talking to you about, solving cross-channel customer experience in the first-party world. And I think if we really look at, from a marketeer perspective, what we want to do in these increasingly challenging times, if third-party cookies are going away, if we look across EMEA and the different, GDPR and all the user privacy regulations we have on a different country level basis, at the end of the day, even with all these challenges, the customer life cycle, the customer journey is still something we want to approach on, and we want to have use cases on. We're still facing, the unknown users, anonymous web visitors or app visitors, right? Once they move into, customer or prospects or subscribers into the, identified customer perspective, talking about use cases like, we still want to do audience suppression, the whole abandonment of the funnel, cross-sell, next best offer, second purchase, with the wide variety, of marketing mix that we are utilizing today. So I think it's important to, take a step back and really understand that this, even with these challenging times, this is what we do, and this is what we want to strive for with personalization to do the best, because, our customers and our prospects are, really wanting to have this experience from us, that this is a unified journey and not, broken down into it. But, as said, GDPR is in place, various different regulations, third-party cookies away. So we need to make some changes and need to understand, how do we actually start collecting, first-party data, especially in this context of these difficult times. And at the end, right, it's all about making sure, the user wants to actually give you that data if they get something in return, right? And when we look at sort of, I think, the industry now, we see this with a lot of retailers. The most prominent experience we always see, give us your email and you get a 10% voucher for your first order. I think that mindset really has to change, and we need to have a strategy in place and look at different various options of how to actually, have different things in place in order to have a first-party data strategy to collect more of this, right? Because if the third-party cookie is going away, and it is, trust me, it is, even though, Google has said we're delaying that process, but there will be a time when we will not have it, and with all the different browser regulations in place as well, third-party cookies are actually not something that are giving us potentially the reach we're looking for. So I really wanted to list a couple of other options to say, there is more out there that we can do to start collecting this, forums, quizzes, giveaways, polls, free trials, whatever it might be, in a strategy context to say, okay, how do we start collecting this first party data in order to, have our addressable audience in place in order to do proper personalized targeting. In the world we live in, and we were for many years, we're really highly focused, on this third-party data context, right? And collecting that was really what we were striving for with the DSPs, with our marketing technologies. We were heavily relying on third-party data, but now in this change that we're going under, there is much more data that we need to collect and store in a centralized place in order to do that, right? There's the second-party data when we still talk about some of the cookies we have, or self-identified household income, or sort of the product category preferences as the user, navigates through our websites. And then first-party data, cross-device device identity matching, loyalty, activity, date of birth, and a really important thing here, of course, also the email address as a, main identifier moving forward. But in that right column that we see here, it is about that self-reported data that we are looking for, right? This needs to be an experience for the customer in order to be willing to share this data with us, because it is sensitive to a lot of people. They might actually not want to give that out very easily. So understanding that and then making sure with, zero-party data in here, the preferred insights and purchase intentions is where we really need to hone in on, because as some of the statistics also that we see on the right-hand side here, 81% of marketers say declared data gives a strong ROI, and that is really the case. We need that first-party data in place today with everything that goes around it in order to activate it in the future. And then 90% of marketeers believe that zero-party data is critical to their growth. Yes, it very much is, right? That's a strategy we want to have in place in order to make sure we can do the things we're doing today, and we can address the user as he moves through the funnel of our websites. We talked about GDPR, right? And this is something, again, how do I make sure I have a GDPR strategy in place? We need to be proactive with that. It's not just, the cookie banner is a one-time thing, or the message of saying, yes, I opt in or I double opt in to email campaigns is one part, but really utilizing this context of understanding what consent or permission I have is crucial, and be proactive in that way of saying, how about you, we see you navigate through the website a lot. You have made several purchases. We really want to utilize your email to give you more personalized messages, better offers, again, coming to my slide of what we could do in order to start collecting that. It's very much the same thing with GDPR to make sure, we even over time use personal consent personalization at the end of the day to increase the amount of first-party data we have, even if users have previously taken the decision of not sharing data. So that really means that privacy is by default, right? It needs to be hard-coded. It needs to be part of the identity. There is no way around it. There is no faking it anymore, because respect for user privacy is such a crucial thing. If we don't do that, and the media starts talking about us as a company to say, oh, there was a data leak, that's not something we want to have. That really hurts brand reputation. That has a major impact on your revenue stream. So respecting that and utilizing privacy by design and respecting that user consent, very, very important. Give them that visibility and transparency around, the state they're in, and make them aware where they are. Again, really just highlights the different points. So data protection in the whole sort of marketing funnel is such a crucial thing to look for when we are thinking about, marketing activation. And then, when we look at CDP and that customer data orchestration with the things I've said, it is about making sure, we start collecting the data on the left-hand side, launch these experience to collect it from web, collect it from app, with the web behavioral data and the consent in place, right? And then really here as that first check with what a CDP then enables is, do we already know this customer, right? I have this identifier as an email potentially or any other PII to make sure, okay, what do I already know? If this is a new customer, right? I set up a new profile. I start collecting the data that as he navigates through the website, and I can start building that profile up in order to A/B test against that. On the other hand, on the bottom, we see, right, if we already know this customer who is coming to our website, let's pull up the previous data that we already have collected about him, right? And launch relevant, highly personalized, targeted experience based of what we have collected in the past. And this is such a crucial aspect with the centralized piece in place to make sure we can really do this, right? And it's not this one-time experience. We evolve through how we do this. And now, if we look at that collection side of things, which is such a crucial topic, we are in a changing world of the third-party cookie apocalypse. So there will be a new marketing mix in place. You know, the channels we have today are working for the use cases we have deployed. But just reflecting maybe a bit of what we see today, we have, you know, our user pool here on the left-hand side. We will always have, you know, those opt-out users with no consent nor permission. That's something we just have to deal with already diminishing, you know, our total addressable audience in terms of who can I reach, who can I personalize through whatever channel, right? Not just, you know, owned and legacy. If we talk about chat, on-site personalization, email, trying to highlight here a bit the comparison of how much we have today in these certain pools. But then, you know, from a performance marketing perspective, you might have Facebook still set up via the cookie, or might be working with one DSP. But my personal opinion is that, you know, once we go into this new age, this is dramatically going to change, right? It's still Facebook as an example, but it's not cookie based anymore. It is PII. We need that email address from the customers in order to work with this. Now, my daughter doesn't actually know what Facebook is, right? They're a TikTok addressable audience, so to say, right? But again, this is a walled garden with PII, Snap PII. You might be looking for various DSPs, right? Amazon is a big player now. You might be looking for Active Agents, Trade Desk, Xandr. I'll go in that in a bit more detail on why we might actually see that increase here. And then we have connected TV as that new channel in order to launch personalized, you know, campaigns on the connected TV. But again, something where we are highly dependent on first-party data in order to activate this. And then this is not even where it stops, right? If we look at clustering the market, we have data clean rooms now as a next sort of solution in order for us to do marketing activities. We see third-party ID networks coming up, Unified ID 2.0 from the Trade Desk as a solution of providers like ID5. We have SSO ID networks, right, from a closed environment. Then we have sort of the DSPs going into the way of having their sort of own ID in order to activate. And then, you know, Project Argus, which to my knowledge has literally just been signed off. But what I'm really trying to say with this is we might actually look at a new list of walled gardens. And this is not something where this is a claim that any of these vendors are stating. But if we look at the development with Xandr and the Netflix inventory, that is unique, right? That might be a walled garden. If we look at an Active Agent, part of the ProSieben network, that might be a publisher network that they only have access to. We know Google Ads, that's YouTube, and of course Google Shirts. Adform, for example, might have exclusive rights in order to buy Schibsted inventory. And then, as mentioned just previously, the European Commission has signed off a joint venture between Telecom, Vodafone, Orange, and Telefonica for marketing purposes. Not quite sure yet what that tool is going to be, but that really, you know, gives me the impression that we are going in this world of potentially new walled gardens. And in order to have the possibility to address my users throughout these different publishers, my marketing mix is going to get more complex at the end of the day. And then also highlighting, you know, the ID vendors. We have Trade Desk, we have IAB Tech Lab, the Advertising ID Consortium, and again, see the different list of you know, activation possibilities here. And some of them are the same for these different providers. You know, some are again more unique. So again, this is going to be a challenge for us in order to make sure, where do I buy? I want to also be able to replace these vendors potentially, because I'm seeing, you know, I am not able to reach my addressable audience there. So I need to be very flexible in understanding, okay, who can I change out? And this is where, again, I'll be talking in a second about it. CDP is such a crucial aspect of that whole funnel, because this is where your data is going to sit, right? And then, you know, I really love what Prohaska Consulting did here with the identity partner ecosystem. It's just, again, highlighting the complexity that we see on the market moving forward with all these different vendors. If we think about deterministic, probabilistic, or, you know, contextual, it's going to be interesting times, and it's going to be a lot more A/B testing for us to understand, okay, where can I get my ID? Just because I have that, you know, unique ID as for the user, it might not mean that I can match them to any of these vendors. So again, from that context perspective, I am at least very excited about what's about to come. And then a bit summarizing it down and you know, bringing it back to why CDP is really crucial in that context, because I have highlighted the data collection aspect, right? No matter where we can get our data from via our tag manager, from, you know, our web data. We might have an app in place where data collection is happening. We might have a Snowflake or AWS, a data lake, or, you know, our brick and mortar stores. So I need to, you know, start collecting all of this, because these are my user touch points where I can start collecting that data, you know, through the different experience of a quiz or whatsoever to collect it, or even down the line once they start making that purchase. And then going into a standardized way of understanding this data. And then we see this first block here, right? This is, again, the very crucial aspect that I mentioned previously about privacy by design, making sure I have the right consent, the right permissions in place to start actually collecting this. It is a very, very crucial topic here. In the middle then, right, that central sort of heart of all of that being, you know, the transformation and enrichments. This is where I build the segments based off of the data I've collected. This is where I make my real-time calculations around saying, you know, what is my customer lifetime value? How has that changed? Was there a purchase? Was there a return, for example? Has he canceled his subscription, right? These are all these real-time triggers at the end of the day where I want to base my marketing activities on and have that centralized sort of 360 customer profile. And then I want to activate it, keeping in mind that I need to respect sort of, again, the consent and permission to understand in this vast variety of marketing mix that we're going to have, where am I actually now allowed to activate this user, right? Is he fine with analytics? Is he fine with my performance marketing campaigns? Can I send him over back to my ESP, my email service provider, to start sending him, you know, personalized messages via email? That's really where it comes down to. And honestly, I've been a media buyer in the past, and having that centralized piece before that, giving me the opportunity to manage 10 different DSPs and don't have to do everything all the time, giving it to the marketeers to be easy and make sure to activate campaigns. Is going to be, you know, the new way moving forward, especially as our MarTech stack will really dramatically increase. A summary, you know, ingest data from any source with consent and permissions through DMP, sorry, that's early, through CDP, no matter where it's come from. We need to be, it is important to really consider that open garden approach here. We have multiple data sources in place within our organizations today. So in order, again, to be able to easily dock on a new data source and start collecting that data is so crucial without having to worry about, you know, where is it coming from? Can I integrate it? Do I have to make sure, you know, and any data layer I have to change up? No, we want to make sure that this is as open as possible, so you have that flexibility to ingest no matter where it comes from. unified individual customer profiles with all of these IDs that we will be needing forward. Yes, we have our walled gardens that will work with PII only, but for potentially any other activities, right, we might actually need to get an ID, a different one, in order to activate it, right? So matching that, building that single customer profile with all these attributes in place in order to have that understanding and be able to activate it across the stack. Again, this is what it comes down to. And then deliver data to any solution that needs it, right? Again, we want to be flexible. We want to be real time in understanding and activating wherever sort of the use case says that I want to activate on. And I want to do this, again, open guarded, or call it best of breed or independent, in this changing world. A single point solution for activation might not do or give us the results we want. So while having all your data in the CDP and being able to, rip and replace almost all my activation channels from a best of breed perspective is key to getting the most return on invest for your business. Because again, data lives centralized, and I only need sort of the activation part of things. And now we want to talk a bit about value, and this is again where I lead the team. So a quick pitch here. We understand that these investments are sometimes a bit hard to understand. We might not actually know what the value is. So we really want to work with our prospects and customers on understanding what the value a CDP can bring, right? So we really strive for stakeholder collaboration and prioritizing of key objectives, looking at path to value, to make sure that you understand the value that a technology can bring. And I just quickly want to highlight, right, a very simple slide around what we've done in the past with a Forrester study to say, what can be that impact to revenue to your business? What is that time to value? What might be the net present value or ROI? We almost live in a crisis now. So, making these investments need to be ROI driven. And this is where we want to come in and really help you understand what it can bring to you and basically your business at the end of the day. And this is something where we really strive for to have, a data set from all the CDP deployments we've done in the past, have those best practices in place, understand each vertical, understand, what really drives that customer journey, and make sure, we have those use cases in place. We have the data ingestion in place, the data activation in place that will drive incremental revenue for you and your business. And that is it. Thank you very much. I really hope this was useful and good takeaways. And yeah.
Thank you, Robin, and a lot of good energy also early in the morning. So just some quick questions to you.
Sure.
Is the death of third-party cookies, is that driving the CDP market?
I would definitely say so. Yes. We've been so heavily relying on that piece because it was easy to implement, throw, a pixel on the web page, data starts collecting. But now in understanding what actually has to change in order to, generate those revenues from marketing campaigns, it really is that understanding. What do I have to do? Where do I get it? I don't want to have file uploads to single activation channels if it's performance or owned and legacy. We need to be thinking about that centralized piece, and I really think that by this change we need to understand where is our customer data going to live in a way that we can activate it like we've done with the third-party cookie easily. So I think that is definitely a trend that we're seeing because that complexity just increases. It was easy to, have a display and video 360 in place, had the possibility to buy, media over various different SSPs, very different publishers, that is going to change. We don't have these possibilities anymore. That understanding, and as I said before, I've in the past done media buying myself. With the use of a CDP and sharing that data. In the past, you had to build, your campaign, your line item. You've done various rules in the DSP in order to sort of have an understanding of who I want to target. Now doing that in 10 channels, I might want to quit my job, actually.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. You're well worth a nice breakfast now, and we have soon a break. So see you soon.
Super.
And have a
Thank
nice
you so
day.
much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, and after break, you will meet Fredrik from Salcedo from Discovery, and he will tell you about his experiences from implementing 3 different platforms, CDP platforms. I think he's the most experienced implementer in Sweden, maybe. But you will meet him after break. We will meet 10 past 11 again. 10 past 11. See you soon. So welcome back again from break, and the last presentation, not least but last presentation, I'm very proud to have the speaker here in the studio. How to utilize a CDP in the world of streaming is the headline, and please meet Director Global Martech Automation at Warner Brothers Discovery, Fredrik Salcedo. Very happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
We met first actually in a breakfast seminar, right? At Berns.
Yeah, that's true.
That was some time ago.
Yeah, that was some time ago.
So is it really true now that you have implemented CDP 3 times?
Actually, no. We're up to the 4th time now.
Oh God, that's
so,
even better.
I'm going to go through it a little bit. You spoiled my slide here, but it's
okay. Stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Happy to be here. My name is Fredrik Salcedo, and as Matt said, I'm the director of the Global Martech and CRM over at Warner Brothers Discovery. As some of you might know, almost a year ago now, we took 2 very big companies, Discovery on one side and then Warner Media on the other, combine them to this gigantic conglomerate and call it Warner Brothers Discovery. So to set the mood a little bit, and also to prove a point a little bit later in my presentation, I thought I'd share a little bit about who I am as a person by showing a little bit what type of shows I'm into. On the HBO Max side, of course, strong number 1 is Succession. If you haven't watched it, strongly recommend it, especially that season 4 is right around the corner. Number 2, Entourage, big classic, same there, great show. And then, of course, Game of Thrones. On the Discovery Plus side, who doesn't like drama, scripted comedy like Udda Veckor, Odd Weeks, great show, or just see how people get stuck in the border at Arlanda by the custom agents, Border Control Sweden. And then if you're into Johan Pettersson and Eva Röse, then Helt Perfekt is for you. All right, that's a little bit about me, and I'll get back to those different types of shows later on in my presentation. As you can imagine, bringing those 2 companies together and those very big brands, it's a lot of content. I'm part of the streaming vertical, so I'm working with HBO Max and Discovery Plus. And I will be going through a little bit on how we are utilizing a CDP, what it means for us, and how important it is to be able for us to identify the users, what they're watching because of this gigantic library of content that we have. A little bit though history and to explain also those 4 CDP implementation. Once upon a time, 2019, feels ages ago, before COVID, we had something that was called Dplay. Dplay was the first aggregated streaming service within Discovery in the Nordics, where we firstly implemented the CDP. Therefore, we learned a lot, created a data structure, and of course, that was the first time we then initiated to working with a CDP in the as a core of the platform. Then in 2020, before the merge, HBO Max was launched globally, replacing all the regional and local streaming services such as HBO Nordics in Sweden. And then in 2021, which also is one of the reasons why you have a guy like me in Sweden working for a big American company, we took this Dplay concept and we scaled it up globally and rebranded to Discovery Plus. Launched in the US, LATAM, rest of Europe, and APAC. Took the Dplay concept and just changed a little bit the code base and implemented a new streaming service. And that's where the 3rd time of the CDP implementation comes in. And then for the 4th time, I think it's no secret that we are launching a new product. We're taking HBO Max and Discovery Plus, bringing it together into one new brand streaming service that's launching in the US right before this summer and coming to you in Europe beginning of next year. Can't go too much into detail into this project, very secret of course, but as you can imagine we are right now in this very moment root deep into implementing our 4th CDP implementation. So with that being said, to the next slide. And like our cousin Greg would say, it is to be said, so it be, so it is. I think by this point and by everyone that you've been listening to this morning, it's not really more, should we get a CDP? It's more, how should we get the CDP or how should we use the CDP? And then if we look a little bit into, okay, what is expected from marketing department 2023? I think many of you recognize what's on this slide. No surprises here, but it's quite a lot. If you have a think about it. You need to be able to have a clear strategy about your first-party data, good way of being able to activate it. You need to be able to identify your users cross devices, connect that with the third-party data you might have. You need to, on top of that, being able to handle all of those different types of consent. GDPR doesn't really make it more easy. You need to be able to track reporting, see that what you do is actually making an impact, attribution of course, and then you have this orchestration, marketing automation on top of that, with of course lots of personalization, and then creating this huge journey to be able to address the user if it's an onboarding part on month 1, or if it's maybe a retention part of the journey, or if the user has already left, then maybe some win-back activities. So all of that together puts a lot of pressure on everyone working with marketing 2023. And of course then a CDP is very much a pillar into being able to enable all of this, because then you have that foundation right in the middle to be able to achieve all of those and to get that data to all of those downstream systems. And to get data to downstream systems, of course, many of us recognize this when it was not that long ago that integrations, you wanted to have data from one system to another. Integrations were associated to big cost, very time-consuming projects. And I think that with most CDP vendors, at least, when it comes to integration, it's a very seamless way to be able to run fast, have high pace, and just be able to do a lot of things very, very quickly. If you look at this one, for example, I just went into our vendor's website, took a screenshot of what integrations they have, and it's just an endless amount of integration. It doesn't end. You have thousands of different downstream systems you can just plug and play into, and that makes it very, very easy to be able to do all of what is expected. And to be able to do all of what is expected, a little bit then into an architecture showing a little bit into, okay, how does it look like? So this is how it looks like over at our place to some extent. And then on the left side, you see all the data sources. You can have everything from, let's say, your data science team working with models, feeding that into your CDP. You have maybe your Zendesk platform. You have GDPR automations. You have your user demographics, behavioral engagement, transactional data, and of course, mobile and device data. Doesn't need to necessarily be super complicated. Most vendors, I would say, at least ours, have SDKs, very straightforward ways of getting that data flowing into the CDP, native integrations. And once you have that into the CDP, then you've come quite far. But now, then what? Well, firstly, you have the events, and I'll come back to working with events, having a data flow that's structured in real time, event trigger based. But you have those connected to, let's say, your marketing automation platform, CRM. Could be Facebook, AppFlyer, Amplitude, or if you're into, I don't know, advanced automations that your marketing automation platform cannot handle, and you are the kind of company that like to do things on your own, you can have it straight into AVS, into your Lambda or EC2, whatever, to calculate and then trigger your marketing automation platform. Possibilities are quite endless, and this is how we have the events that comes into the CDP getting flowed into the downstream systems on a real-time basis. But then also, I think that's the most important thing, and where it most often is an issue within marketing, is in terms of audiences. Having this single source of truth where you define your audience in the CDP and then you make use of that everywhere. So you call an apple, and then all the downstream users or systems use that same definition of an apple and get the same users. And it's quite important because if you look at us also in terms of, let's say, saving some money when you're doing some campaigns. We have Allsvenskan around the corner. Of course, we could just spread across paid channels and just trust the Facebook algorithm in terms of audiences, but we would be spending quite a lot of money. We do, but we want to do it in a smarter way. So what we do is then identify from our users into, okay, who is more likely to identify with Allsvenskan or to watch Allsvenskan, or maybe have had a subscription previously. You have this audience of Allsvenskan superfans into the CDP that is then spreading this audience into, let's say, Facebook, to be able to then target them and to hopefully a cheaper cost. But then the last piece of this architecture, I would say, is the engine of personalization, which is, for us at least, very, very crucial. And yes, we are a streaming service, but I would imagine that many companies are in very big need of such an engine. For us, it's our recommendation engine, being able to personalize in terms of content to all of our users. As I was going through previously, of course, we have a very wide library in terms of content. I mean, not everyone is fond of naked attraction or X on the beach. Maybe you want to watch Succession or Game of Thrones. And then, of course, then having this engine being fed by the CDP, but all the users are watching, is very crucial. And how we are doing that is by an event-structured data flow. And it could look like something like this. Firstly, you have the behavioral events. Very, very important for us, of course, because this is what tells us what the users are watching. So, yes, we are tracking every move you do into the product, every time you're watching something, every time you add to your favorite, download, finish an episode, whatever type of content that you're watching, this is being monitored and sent it to your profile into the CDP. Very important to tell us and to have that information on you. Then you have, of course, the transactional events, which tells us if you're buying a subscription, what type of subscription, or if it's an upgrade, downgrade, maybe cancellation or termination. Very important types of events to be able to have those type of automation trigger flows. If a user cancels, then you maybe want to automate some win-back flows. So, of course, those events are also very crucial. And then you have the engagement events. You have, for example, has the user interacted with the email? Very important also to get back into the CDP, because that could then being fed to the data science team's models in terms of what channel should we engage with you. If every time we send you an email, you don't even open it, but you do something through push, then yeah, push notification should be then maybe the channel we should reach out through you. The CDP gets that information and delivers that to the right team or the downstream systems to be able to give you that information. Same like if you have some consent changes, if you unsubscribe from email, push, whatever, or whatever page view you have on the product. So with those events all together, it could look like something like this. And this is not a censored CIA transcript. This is just me going way overkill into my profile, because I doubt that anyone is interested in my subscription termination code. But better safe than sorry. On the left-hand side, you have an example of how a high-level overview profile could look like. You have all the demographics. You have what the user's been watching. Some product affinities, and then on the right-hand side you have an example of this so-called event. So this is a playback start showing that someone on my profile, at least, I don't take any responsibility for what is on there, has been watching a certain episode of a certain show. And that, of course, then enables you to have all of those different types of activities, in this case, in the CRM platform, to then automate some different types of the user journey or some campaigns, or be part of some audiences based on this activity. Because you could make an audience, okay, we just launched this show, we want to target them for this other show that we're launching. Let's take everyone who has a playback start within the last 30 days of this specific show. So that's the type of way you work with the audiences in the CDP. And then if we take that into an example, let's say we have a user who goes into the product and sees this show. And of course, who doesn't love this show, right? Then wants to add it to my list, so that that user doesn't have to browse through the product every time to find it if there's any new episodes, and adds it to my list. Okay, great. But what happens under the hood here is that you have, back to the architecture then, you have the user, so the engagement data, an add to favorite event is being sent to the CDP. The CDP then stores it under the profile and then sends it into the CRM tool. But what also happens is that enables you to be able to have some automations that are put in place that, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6 days go by and you still haven't watched The Last of Us, which would be very weird because you need to watch it as soon as we publish an episode. But let's say you haven't watched it, then it could generate an automation in terms of, let's say, a push reminder saying, hey, don't forget that you have The Last of Us episode that is waiting for you. So that's an example of how those event structured data flows could also generate the downstream's automation in example given your CRM platform. And then last but not least, famous last words, of course. I would say, if you ask me, what the CDP enables is, of course, firstly, personalization. It's the key to being able to identify your users, know what your users are doing, to collect that into one single place, and then to just plug and play into the downstream system, making it very easy and also very low-hanging fruit into being able to achieve those type of automations that you want to do. Secondly, it also, of course, then enables you for automations. If you look at a company for us, like us, you'll understand that, of course, we need automation. We exist in more than 60 countries, have endless amount of languages. We need to be able to have scale, and then automation is the only answer. The CDP is giving you this answer. And then also, very important, it gives you insights, because then you are taking all of this data you have into the CDP and then flowing it to your downstream system for analytics and being able to look into your performance, look into your insight and see what are we doing, is it working, do we need to increase it, decrease it, change it, modify it, terminate it, whatever, and it gives you the answer of if what you're doing is right or not. That was me, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.
So thank you, Fredrik. A lot of information, and happy to hear that you had implemented even not 3 but 4 actually.
Yeah, 20 minutes, sorry, it was Speedy Gonzalez here, but there's lots to cover in 20 minutes. CDP is a very big topic.
I can imagine. But in terms of organization, where do you belong? I mean, your part.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I belong to the central marketing team, where most of my department is located, because we originate from the Dplay, but all our colleagues are happily based in LA. So yeah, late night meetings.
So, because I mean, your title, MarTech Automation Director of, it sounds like more techy than
very tech focused. So it's everything related to tech for marketing. So all the different types of crazy ideas marketing department can have. We are the ones to answer this answer in terms of tech.
Okay. I mean, you said something about the expectations from management and others for marketing departments and marketing people, marketeers. Any more comments on that? Is it increasing all the time and will be even worth 2024?
I don't remember who was saying that earlier today, but I think definitely, I mean, the MarTech stack is just going to increase, and then expectations from end user is just going to increase, regardless if you're B2B, B2C, whatever. End users are going to expect that if I'm interacting with your brand as a private consumer or through companies, it's just going to be the same. I think someone named human to human, and that's the way we're going to go, and it's just going to increase. Hopefully it's going to be a little bit easier. I mean, you have ChatGPT who's making its way into the businesses. I think that's going to revolutionize how we're working also in marketing and in terms of tech too. I mean, I have my team. I know some of them are already using it to just either write code or identify bugs, etc. So it's going to be a bit easier, but definitely we're going to just continue to increase the tech capabilities.
Good. And we have, I mean, send in questions for Fredrik. We have a question already from the audience. So Daniel.
Yeah, they wonder if you have the same CDP for all 4 different integrations.
Yeah, true loyal customer. So same CDP for all 4 of them. Yeah.
And they of course want to know which CDP.
Yeah, MParticle is the CDP that we chose. And initially, back in the days for the ePlay, we chose MParticle because they were the ones that had the best use cases to fit a streaming service like us in terms of events, identify what users are watching and the behavior that you have in streaming.
Do you think that it's still a competitive advantage by using personal information and personal communication, maybe by using a CDP, or is it more people expect that at the moment and it's not an advantage any longer?
Depends who you're asking, I guess. I believe many end users might not really understand how this is achieved. I mean, you receive your Facebook ad or your email, and then it's personalized for you as a user. You just expect, well, it's 2023. I want you to know. I think any of us, even if you don't work within marketing, you get annoyed if you get the wrong targeting or the wrong type of message into your inbox. So I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that you maybe get used to, I mean, especially your industry, we're very good at doing that. Also, then you expect that from all the other vendors that you connected with, or retailers and...
Yeah, I mean, one of the perks in the streaming industry is that it's relatively new, one could say, which then has been given the opportunity to build quite recently. It's maybe a bit difficult if you have a more traditional business than to rebuild. I imagine that banks, for example, might have a slightly bigger challenge than a streaming company to really go full steam ahead with a CDP implementation and to just be fully automated, because then you of course have more legacy platforms to care about.
Mm. What about, I mean, you're running a lot of projects, CDP projects in the past. What is your experiences in terms of, do you have any recommendations of what you really should think of and what you not should do?
Well, of course, and that's maybe a classic one, but I would say have everyone on board. Regardless, if you think you have everyone on board at the start of the project, you always will encounter people that will try to work against this type of implementation. Maybe people are also a bit scared of changes and don't really enjoy new technologies or new. We've always been doing this way, so why not continue this way type of mentality. So it will be quite political, and then you take a budget and then you maybe multiply it by 2, 3, and then you have the right amount where you're going to end up. But on the other hand, with all of those plug and play integrations that, let's say, a CDP enables, it reduces the amount of consultancy dramatically. I mean, if I compare it to how it looked like before CDP compared to how it looks like today, in terms of consultancy help, it's night and day. Much more internal work being done today.
And if you want to have a consultant or any kind of external support, what do you think is that role for that consultant? More an advisor or?
It depends on the company profile, but I would say maybe more operational work, perhaps. I think strategy is a bit easier to identify, and most companies often struggle down the day into, okay, we have the strategy, now we need to to make it operational, and then to find the people who actually do the work. That's a bit harder than to find the people who say, this is how you should do it. So that type of consultancy, perhaps.
Good. Thank you, Fredrik.
Thank you.
And now it's time for the end, and I hope that you are now full of energy and a lot of insights and ideas from the speakers. What about looking at this slide? And Customer Loyalty Conference coming up the 1st of June. That is kind of a little bit out of topic, but then it's close to this one, and don't miss that. Also, we have a breakfast seminar in the morning at that day, and we have a CRM training course the day before. So there's a lot of things to do there around that conference. I would like a very big thank you to all the speakers and to our event partners. It's Adobe, it's MParticle, it's Tealium, it's Remotion, and it's the Park Studios for making this happen. Time to say goodbye and see you soon again. Bye-bye.